thanks for joining me for this month's Society Chat. The official ASCRS podcast, Gut Check, now has 17 episodes available for download and streaming. These cover topics from recurrent rectal cancer to medical school loans. Our wonderful group of co-hosts focus on insightful and timely clinical topics, as well as practice-related and humanizing non-clinical topics. So a big thanks to hosts Alex Key, Avery Walker, Biddy Das, Erin King-Mullins, Jonathan Abelson, and Sam Eisenstein. Episodes to be released this month will cover anastomotic leaks and asking for help after complications. I hope you've already registered for the 2023 Annual Scientific Meeting and are starting to plan your travel and attendance schedule. This year's meeting will again feature super sessions, which are an expanded, deeper dive on a clinical topic and feature up-to-date best practices, top abstracts, and an expert panel to discuss the topic at hand. We've spaced them out so there's one super session each day of the conference. This year's program really features a diverse set of topics that speaks to everyone in surgery. There are so many sessions I'm really excited about, including the top 5 clinical trials, which will feature Dr. Stephen Goldstone, Maria Widmer, Rocco Riccardi, Carl Brown, and Steve Wexner. The Practice Management Symposium will cover basic principles of the business of clinical practice development and maintenance, while also providing skills for dealing with change management, organizational relationships, communication skills, and strategic thinking. The New Technologies Symposium has now really become an annual ASCRS event, presenting new technologies in the field of colon and rectal surgery. And new this year is the International Symposium that I will be participating in, along with leaders from India, Japan, Turkey, and Australia. This month, I'd like to welcome Dr. Ian Paquette, Chair of the Clinical Practice Guidelines Committee, to give an update on the committee's efforts and recently published clinical practice guidelines. Welcome, Ian.
My name is Ian Paquette. I'm a colorectal surgeon at the University of Cincinnati. I'm the chief of the Division of Colorectal Surgery here in Cincinnati, and I have served as the chair of the Clinical Practice Guidelines Committee of the ASCRS. Yeah, I think I'd like to go back a little bit as to how we got to where we are now. The Practice Guidelines Committee actually started in 1992, at which time it was called the Standards Task Force. We've come a long way since then. If you look at the first practice guidelines that were published in 1992, the documents were 2 to 3 pages long, no references, and essentially it was just a collection of the opinions of the senior members of society. It's morphed quite a bit over the years to the form that it takes now that most of our members are familiar with, and has gotten that way slowly over time. Starting several years back, when Don Bowie was the chair of the committee, he introduced more of a formal literature synthesis using the grade system that we're become familiar with. And then he headed the committee to Janice Rafferty, and then Scott Steele, Dan Feingold, and now myself. I'd like to think the committee has taken a lot of changes since then, and I like the form that it's in. And when you ask about what the mission is fairly simple. We are trying to synthesize the literature on all of the important topics in colon and rectal surgery, so they are right at the fingertips of our members, that they can look them up and have the best available evidence of how to practice. We're not trying to tell you how to practice. We're not trying to dictate how you practice. But if you look at the process that goes into these, for example, the original 1992 rectal cancer paper was, I said, 3 pages long and had no references. The 2020 rectal cancer practice guideline was 32 pages long and had several hundred references. And I use that one as a good example because that was published in 2020, and we have actually recently found that that's out of date because the literature changes so fast. So I would summarize to say that the current mission of the committee is to try to be as current as we possibly can be, and be as thorough as we can be in the literature, We've modified our grading recommendation to fit with the most current conventions, and now when you read our parameters, you'll see, based on our full literature review, we make recommendations such as strong recommendations that we really feel should apply to every patient, and conditional recommendations that have a little bit more nuance to it. We have a lot of projects going on. The Clinical Practice Guideline Committee is probably one of the busier committees. We actually have a list of about 26 different practice guidelines that we maintain. So when you see a practice guideline come out, we probably started a year to 2 years before in making that guideline. So we have a list of the guidelines that are up here available on the screen that cover all of the major aspects in colon and rectal surgery. And our mission is to have an up-to-date literature search on all of these topics and try to synthesize what the literature says about each of the important aspects. When we do publish a guideline, we also publish those in disease of the colon and rectum, but we do a podcast to interview the author and summarize the key findings and get into some of the nuance. And those can be found in the DCNR podcast. And all of our clinical practice guidelines are available for free to any ASCRS member right on the ASCRS website, which is a great resource to have. There are a lot of opportunities to participate in clinical practice guidelines. We're looking for very motivated people who are hard workers and good writers. And there's always interest in having more interested parties involved. Even if you're not on the committee and writing about the practice guidelines, these have been pretty active on social media. When they're posted, there's a lot of Twitter discussion. So even if you're not writing the guidelines, get involved and interact and spread the word that they're out there, because it's a great resource for practicing surgeons to use. The first step to get involved would be to volunteer, just like it is on any committee of the ASCRS. We can't take you onto the committee unless you volunteer, so keep an eye out for that ASCRS call for committee volunteers, and put the CPG committee up at the top of your list.
Ian, thanks for such a wonderful update. We really thank you on behalf of leadership, the society, and all of our members for the amazing work that your group does. As a reminder to watchers and listeners, clinical practice guidelines are available on ASCRSU and really are one of the prized possessions of the Society and the journal. Thank you for watching, and remember, this is your specialty and ASCRS is your society. You are part of this 124-year legacy of surgeons who have made our specialty what it is today. And actually, I'm excited about one of the next phases, which is what Dr. Much is putting together for next year's meeting and celebration of 125 years of our society. With that, I will see you next time on the next episode. Thank you.